So now we have a little interactive 5-minute writing activity, Wesley, that you prepared for our audience. If you want to go ahead and walk them through what you like everyone to do.
Yeah, so you can either do this mentally, of course, or if you want to write something down, either pen and paper or write on your laptop. Essentially, these are just the 6 questions I use for actually building a story. So when writing, sometimes you can have that thunderbolt moment where an idea strikes you. A lot of the time, when you are doing this professionally or long term, you're building stories and you're constructing them from the ground up. And part of that is knowing um, what you want to write, but how you want to present it. So I thought I would just share the 6 things I generally ask myself and why I kind of ask them. And I can give an example of how it literally led me to a book and kind of how that works. So again, you can write something down for this if you want. So the first question I always ask myself is, what is something I know very well? With bonus points for being something that is not well known by everybody, that is misunderstood a lot of the time, that I have to explain to people sometimes, or that I would like people to know more about. So that's how I always find the personal core of a novel. Um, it's always nice if it's important to you. It's always nice if it has some sort of passion or emotion for you. But again, the question is, what do I know very well? And you can come up with 1 or 2 things from there, of course. Uh, the second question after that, and I start this pretty early, is who do I want to tell the story to? Or who do I want to talk about this topic to? So is that kids? If it is, how old? Do I picture this speaking to really young kids with illustrations? Do I want to speak to teenagers? Do I want to speak to adults? When I establish right away who I want to tell the story to, that's going to lead me to figure out what kind of format, of course. Um, it's going to dictate how I describe the characters and how I describe the setting. So again, we have what is something I know very well, and who do I want to talk about it to? So we have our audience and our topic. Next, I usually like to either set the setting or I set my character. When I set my setting, I always ask myself, where is somewhere I know very intimately, or where is somewhere that I want to spend time? Because you're going to spend a lot of time. So if you're writing fantasy or fiction, or you're writing, let's say, international intrigue and spy fiction, then it makes sense to pick somewhere that you want to be, because you're not always going to have been to places in that case. But if you're telling something and you're really focused on authenticity, then the places that you've been or the places you are of course going to enable you to write about that a lot more effectively. So for me, it's always, where have I been, or where am I, or where do I really want to spend a lot of time? Because if you're writing a story, you're going to spend months or years in that area. So you better get used to it and you better like it. The fourth question I always ask myself is, what kind of book do I feel like reading? Or what theme do I need in my life right now? Because again, writing is, of course, an inherently personal experience. So it's always going to be reflective of what's going on in your life. So, uh, do I need a little comedy in my life? Do I want a mystery because that's just what I like to read? Do I need something inherently hopeful? Or am I okay in expressing maybe some darker emotions at the time? So it's always that question of, what do I want to read, or what do I need right now? That's the great part about writing, is we get to dictate our own adventure. We're choosing our own adventure, and we're choosing our own experience for the months and weeks, or years to come in some cases. Finally, actually, sometimes I bump this one a little earlier. Actually, the second last one, sorry. This is the catch-all question that I'll explain because it sounds really weird. The question is, what's in my character's pocket on a Tuesday? And the reason that sounds so specific is because you really need to know your character intimately, inside and out. Um, so when I'm thinking about my character, I'm thinking, A, is it me or some interpretation of me? Am I putting some part of myself into the page? Is it someone I like? If I don't, why should the reader like them? We have to sort of appeal to that. And then I need to know them so well that I actually need to know what's in their pocket on a Tuesday, sort of an inane question. But if I can answer that sort of instantaneously, then I know I have a truly fleshed out example of what my character is. I do think one of the easiest tricks or tips to writing a great story is to getting to really know your character well. And if you know them well enough, they're going to guide you throughout the plot. They're going to answer all the questions that you run into, and you'll know exactly. When I know Benny really well, I knew how he would react to every situation. And so that helps guide me as I'm writing my stories. And finally, this is important. What's my goal for the story? Is it to publish it? Is it personally for me and my family? Do I want to try and be a #1 New York Times bestseller? You really should establish right away what the dream is for the novel or what the point is, because that's also going to dictate approach. If you want to be a #1 New York Times bestseller, you're probably going to have to follow a little bit more formulaic approach. You're probably going to have to get used to editing and cutting a lot of the things that you think that you want to have in there. Um, that's a very, again, organized approach to something. Whereas if it's a personal story, you're going to have a little bit more freedom. And I'll explain that as we run through again. So I'll show you exactly how this led to one of my better known books. What is something I know very well? Well, at the time, it was obsessive compulsive disorder and anxiety. It was the predominant thing I was dealing with in my life at the time. So I knew right away I wanted to write about that. Who do I want to tell the story to? In that case, it was myself at 11 years old. I wanted to talk exactly to the kid at that age who didn't know what he was dealing with. Um, where is somewhere I know or somewhere I want to spend time? I said it at the actual school where I was at that time. Again, this was a very grounded approach. What kind of book do I feel like reading? What theme do I need? I knew that I always loved mystery, but I knew that I also needed something hopeful at the time because, I was struggling with it and I wanted a hopeful message about that theme. What is in my character's pocket on a Tuesday? I knew it was just some sort of utensil to write with. That was the nature. He always wanted to have something handy to be able to write. And my goal for that story, this is going to sound incredibly cliche, but it was really to just reach one single kid who needed to hear the story at the time. I always thought if this reached one person and elicited some hope or some communication, that would make it worthwhile. So those questions led me to write O.C. Daniel. That sort of became the framework of how I knew what I wanted to write. And of course, from there, the plot started coming together. But I do find maybe you won't use all of those questions, but if you are interested in writing something, I think asking yourself some of those is going to make you, is going to help guide you a little bit onto where you want to go and what you want to do, and to treat it seriously because, as we all know, it's a big commitment. So if you got to be passionate about it and you got to know who you want to tell it and why. So those are just some of the tips that I use when I'm doing my writing.